The great crystal chamber of Nexus Prime sparkled with light from 12 different suns. Ambassador Hyun-woo Kim walked slowly across the smooth floor, his black shoes making soft sounds on the crystal surface. Behind him, Captain So-young Park and Dr. Jin-ho Lee followed at a respectful distance. Their human delegation looked small compared to the massive aliens that filled the council seats around them. The Galactic Council had called this meeting 3 months ago. Hyun-woo knew exactly why they were here. The message had been clear. Humanity needed to be put in its place. High Arbiter Morden stood up from his golden throne. The Craxi leader was nearly 3 meters tall, with thick purple skin and 4 powerful arms. His voice boomed across the chamber like thunder. The Council of 12 Worlds calls this session to order. We gather today to address the human problem. Hyun-woo sat down in the small chair that had been provided for him. It was clearly meant to make him feel tiny and unimportant. Around the chamber, representatives from 12 alien species looked down at him with expressions that ranged from mild curiosity to open disgust. For 150 of your Earth years, Morden continued, we have watched your species spread across the stars like a virus. You have ignored our guidance. You have refused our wisdom. You have acted as if you know better than civilizations that are thousands of years old. The aquatic Sithari representative, Counselor Veltar, shifted nervously in her water-filled tank. Bubbles rose to the surface as she spoke through her translator device. Perhaps we could discuss this more calmly, High Arbiter. The humans have made some useful contributions. Morden's 4 eyes fixed on Veltar with anger. Useful. They have built artificial intelligences without permission. They have expanded into 47 star systems in less than 2 centuries. They treat other species as equals instead of showing proper respect to their elders. Dr. Lee leaned forward slightly. Hyun-woo could see his friend's jaw tighten, but the xenobiologist stayed quiet. They had agreed beforehand to let Hyun-woo do all the talking. A Vorthan representative, its snake-like body coiled around a floating platform, hissed its agreement. The humans refuse to follow established trade routes. They create their own paths through space. They upset the natural order of commerce. They share technology freely, added a hegemony delegate, its crystalline form glowing with irritation. This causes instability in established hierarchies. Young species get ideas above their station. Captain Park's hand moved slightly toward her sidearm, but she caught herself. The gesture was so small that probably only Hyun-woo noticed it. He gave her the tiniest shake of his head. Morden activated a holographic display in the center of the chamber. It showed a map of known space, with human colonies marked in bright red. Look at this spread. In the time it takes most species to establish 5 colonies, humans have built 47. They show no respect for traditional expansion protocols. We asked for permission, Hyun-woo said quietly. What? Morden's massive head turned toward him. We asked for permission to expand, Hyun-woo repeated, his voice calm and steady. For each of those 47 systems, we followed every protocol you gave us. We waited for approval that took decades to arrive. We paid every fee you required. You should have waited longer, roared the Drakmori representative, its metallic claws scraping against its seat. A proper species waits centuries between expansions. Hyun-woo nodded slowly. I see. And how many of your species' colonies failed during those waiting periods? How many of your people died while waiting for permission to find new homes? The chamber fell silent for a moment. Then Morden's booming voice filled the space again. This is exactly the kind of arrogance we are here to address. You question methods that have kept peace for millennia. The High Arbiter gestured, and the hologram changed to show technical displays. Your artificial intelligences pose a threat to galactic stability. Your medical techniques interfere with natural selection. Your fusion reactors produce too much energy too quickly. Dr. Lee finally spoke up. Our medical techniques have saved over 40 million alien lives in the past decade. Interfering with the natural order, Morden snapped. Those lives were meant to end. Your meddling disrupts the balance of the universe. Veltar's bubbles increased in frequency. High Arbiter, perhaps we should consider silence. Morden's 4 arms spread wide. We have tolerated human expansion long enough. Today, we correct this mistake." He gestured again, and a new hologram appeared. This one showed legal documents, written in 12 different alien languages. "The Galactic Council hereby demands the following from the human species. First, you will surrender all artificial intelligence technology to Council oversight. Second, you will cease expansion beyond your current 47 systems. Third, you will submit to guidance from more mature civilizations in all matters of technology, trade, and diplomacy." Hyun-woo listened carefully as the translator device repeated the demands in Korean, then English. Around the chamber, 11 of the 12 council members nodded their approval. Only Veltar remained still in her tank. "These terms are non-negotiable," Morden declared. "You have 72 standard hours to accept them. Failure to comply will result in economic sanctions, technology embargoes, and exclusion from all council activities." The chamber buzzed with excited chatter from the alien representatives. They had been planning this moment for months. Finally, the upstart humans would be put in their proper place. Hyun-woo stood up slowly. His movement was so calm and deliberate that the chatter gradually died down. All eyes focused on the small human in his simple black suit. "Thank you for making your position so clear," he said. His voice carried easily across the crystal chamber despite its quiet tone. "We appreciate your honesty about how you view humanity." Mordun leaned forward. "Then you accept our terms?" Hyun-woo looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes of each council member in turn. When he spoke again, his voice was still calm, but there was something new in it. Something that made several aliens shift uncomfortably in their seats. "We decline!" The chamber erupted. Alien voices rose in anger, surprise, and disbelief. How dare these newcomers refuse the wisdom of their elders? How could they reject guidance from civilizations that had ruled the stars for thousands of years? Morden raised all 4 arms for silence. "You refuse? Do you understand what this means? Do you comprehend the consequences of defying this council?" "We understand perfectly," Hyun-woo replied, "which is why we have already made our decision. Effective immediately, humanity withdraws from the Galactic Council." More shouting erupted, but Hyun-woo continued speaking over the noise. "We are recalling all human ambassadors from council member worlds. We are terminating all joint research projects, trade agreements, and military cooperation pacts. All human colonies in council-controlled space will be evacuated within 6 months." Captain Park and Dr. Lee stood up behind him. They began gathering the few items the human delegation had brought to the meeting. "You cannot be serious!" Morden's voice shook with rage. "You think you can survive without our guidance, without our trade networks, without our protection?" Hyun-woo walked toward the chamber exit, his footsteps echoing in the sudden quiet. At the massive doors, he turned back to face the council one last time. "Perhaps we cannot," he said simply. "But we would rather fail on our own terms than succeed under yours." The blast doors began to slide shut behind the human delegation. In the growing gap, Mordun's final words echoed across the chamber. "You will come crawling back within a year. Mark my words, humans. You will beg us to take you back." The doors sealed with a resonating clang that seemed to shake the entire station. For a long moment, the council chamber remained silent. Then excited chatter broke out again as the alien representatives began discussing the implications of humanity's dramatic exit. Only Veltar remained quiet in her tank, watching the sealed doors with something that looked like worry in her large, dark eyes. 3 months had passed since the dramatic meeting at Nexus Prime. Captain So-Young Park stood on the observation deck of her command ship, watching the final evacuation of New Busan Colony. The human settlement had been the pride of the Outer Rim, home to nearly 2 million people. Now it was being carefully dismantled piece by piece. "Transport 17 is loaded and ready for departure," reported Commander Bo-Ram Yoon from her position at the communications console. "That makes 43 ships today." Park nodded, her eyes fixed on the planet below. Lights were going out across the major cities as humans packed up their lives and prepared to leave. "How many more days until we're completely evacuated?" 17. "Days, Captain," replied Engineer Hae-Jin Song, looking up from his datapad. "Assuming the weather holds and we don't hit any major equipment failures." The evacuation of New Busan was happening across the galaxy. Every human colony outside of their original 47 systems was being abandoned. It was the largest movement of people in galactic history, and it was happening with clockwork precision. Admiral Young-Sik Choi appeared on the main screen, calling from his flagship in orbit around the Centauri trade station. "Captain Park, how are things progressing on your end?" "On schedule, Admiral," Park replied. "Engineer Song's teams have been incredible. They're not just packing up our stuff, they're removing every piece of human technology from the planet." Song looked up from his workstation. "We're pulling out the fusion reactors, the quantum communication arrays, even the water purification systems we installed in the native settlements. If humans built it, fixed it, or improved it, we're taking it with us." This was happening everywhere. Human engineers were systematically removing every trace of their technology from alien worlds. The improvements they had made to alien infrastructure over the past century and a half were being carefully dismantled and shipped back to human space. On the planet below, Dr. Jin-Ho Lee was supervising the evacuation of the Medical Research Center. The facility had been working on treatments for 17 different alien diseases. Now, all the research data was being loaded onto transport ships, along with the advanced medical equipment that had made the research possible. Veltar, the Sithari counselor, had traveled to New Busan personally to oversee the transition. She floated in her mobile water tank beside Dr. Lee as he directed the packing teams. "But the plague on Keth 7th, Veltar said, her translator crackling with urgency. "Your researchers are the only ones who understand the treatment protocol. Without them, thousands will die." Dr. Lee looked up from the medical scanner he was carefully wrapping in protective foam. "We offered to share all our research data with the Galactic Council 3 years ago. The Medical Review Board said our methods were unproven and potentially dangerous to established medical practices." "That was different," Veltar protested. "This is an emergency, and we're responding exactly as the Council requested," Lee replied sadly. "We're removing all dangerous human medical technology from Council space." Isn't that what they wanted? Veltar's tentacles writhed in distress, but she could not argue with the logic. The Council had indeed rejected human medical advances repeatedly, claiming they were too aggressive and interfered with natural healing processes. Meanwhile, trader Mi Kyung-nam was closing down the commercial exchange on Vorthon Prime. Her trading post had been one of the most successful businesses in the sector, serving as a hub for commerce between dozens of different species. Now she was shutting down operations and liquidating all her assets. "This is madness," complained her Vorthon business partner, its snake-like body coiled around a stack of shipping containers. "We were making enormous profits. The trade routes you established have increased commerce in this sector by 300%. Nam sealed the last shipping container and activated its anti-gravity lifters. The Galactic Council was very clear about human trade practices being disruptive to established commerce. We're simply respecting their wishes. But what about our contracts? Our shipping agreements? All terminated, as specified in the withdrawal clauses," Nam replied. "The routes humans discovered and maintained will be publicly available, but we won't be managing them anymore. You're free to establish your own shipping networks." The Vorthon's eyes widened with panic. "But we don't know how to navigate those routes. The stellar phenomena, the gravitational anomalies. Your pilots were the only ones who could handle those passages safely." Nam shrugged apologetically. "I'm sure you'll figure it out. After all, you're a mature civilization with thousands of years of space travel experience." Similar conversations were happening throughout the galaxy. Human expertise that had been taken for granted was suddenly disappearing, leaving alien civilizations to manage systems they had never fully understood. Commander Yoon was monitoring communications from across Council space, tracking the ripple effects of the human withdrawal. Her intelligence reports painted a picture of growing confusion and concern among the alien governments. "Admiral," she reported during the morning briefing, "we're intercepting increasing amounts of emergency traffic from Council worlds. The Hegemony Trade Network is experiencing major disruptions. Several colonies are reporting power grid failures, and there's been a significant increase in pirate activity along the rim worlds." Admiral Choi studied the reports with a grim expression. "How are the Council members responding publicly?" "High Arbiter Morden held a press conference yesterday," Yoon replied. "He said the disruptions were expected and temporary. Quote, the galaxy is simply adjusting to independence from human interference. This proves we were right to remove their destabilizing influence." "And privately?" "Very different story, sir. We're picking up encrypted communications between council members. Emergency sessions have been called. Several species are demanding explanations for the infrastructure failures. Park watched another transport ship lift off from New Busan, carrying 1,000 more humans back to Earth-controlled space. Any regrets from the council about their ultimatum? Not officially, Yoon said. But Veltar has been sending discreet messages to Dr. Lee. She's asking if there's any way to slow down the withdrawal or maintain some human presence in council space. What's been our response? Admiral Choi's expression remained neutral. We've told them that the withdrawal timeline is non-negotiable. They wanted us gone, so we're leaving. Completely. Down on the planet, Engineer Song was overseeing the removal of the fusion reactor that powered New Busan's main city. The process was delicate and dangerous. The reactor had been providing clean energy to nearly 3 million beings for over 50 years. What will happen to the city after we remove this? Asked a young alien engineer who had been learning from Song's team. Song checked his instruments one final time before beginning the shutdown sequence. You'll need to find an alternative power source. The old coal-burning plants should still be functional, though they'll produce a fraction of the energy and considerable pollution. But we don't know how to maintain fusion technology. The Council determined that fusion reactors were too advanced for your species' current technological level, Song replied, repeating the exact words from a Council ruling 3 years earlier. We're simply following their guidance. As the reactor powered down, lights began flickering across the city. Emergency power systems kicked in, but they could only support essential services for a few days. Soon, the bustling metropolis would return to the technological level it had before humans arrived. The same scene was playing out on dozens of worlds. Human technology that had been seamlessly integrated into alien civilization for decades was being carefully removed. Quantum computers, medical scanners, water purification systems, communication arrays, all of it was being packed up and shipped back to human space. President Yoon Ji-kwon received daily reports from Admiral Choi about the evacuation progress. The sheer scale of the operation was staggering. Nearly 50 million humans were being relocated from council space, along with trillions of credits worth of technology and infrastructure. Are we doing the right thing? Asked her chief of staff during a private meeting in Seoul. President Kwon looked out the window at the busy streets of Earth's capital. The council made their position clear. They view us as dangerous children who need to be controlled. They want us to abandon our technology, stop our expansion, and submit to their authority. We gave them a choice: accept us as equals or lose us entirely. They chose to lose us. But the humanitarian costs will be severe, Kwon agreed. But the alternative was worse. If we had accepted their ultimatum, we would have become a slave species. Our children would grow up believing that humans are naturally inferior to other aliens. Our technology would stagnate under council oversight. Our expansion would be limited to whatever scraps they decided to throw us. She turned back to her chief of staff. The council wanted to teach us a lesson about our place in the galaxy. Instead, they're about to learn a lesson about the consequences of their arrogance. The evacuation continued with methodical efficiency. Human colonies that had existed for generations were being abandoned in a matter of months. The galaxy was about to discover exactly how much it had come to depend on the dangerous children it had just expelled. 8 months had passed since the humans walked out of the Galactic Council. Dr. Sang-Min Jang stared at the holographic displays floating above his desk in the Economic Analysis Center on Luna. The numbers were staggering, even worse than their most pessimistic projections. President Kwon, he said into his communication device, you need to see the latest reports from Council Space. The situation is deteriorating faster than we predicted. President Yoon Ji-kwon appeared on his screen within minutes, calling from her office in Seoul. Behind her, the lights of Earth's capital glittered in the evening darkness. How bad is it, Dr. Jang? Jang activated his main display, showing economic data from across the galaxy. Red indicators flashed like warning lights on dozens of star systems. The Vorthon Trade Consortium has lost 63% of their shipping capacity. The major trade routes that humans discovered and maintained are becoming impassable. Pirates have taken control of at least 15 key sectors. What about the colonies? Worse. Yang switched to another display showing power grid failures across council space. 47 worlds are experiencing rolling blackouts. The fusion reactors we removed provided clean energy for over 2 billion beings. They're trying to replace them with older technology, but it's not working. President Kwan studied the data with growing concern. Medical facilities? The Akwan Medical Institute is reporting treatment failure rates up 40%. Without human medical technology and expertise, they're struggling with diseases that were easily manageable just months ago. The plague on Keth 7th has spread to 3 more systems. Captain Wu Jin-ko interrupted the call from his patrol ship on the border of human space. Madam President, I'm sorry to intrude, but you need to know about the refugee situation. We have over 30,000 beings requesting asylum at our checkpoints, mostly civilians from failing colonies. President Kwan rubbed her temples. The reports kept getting worse every day. Our policy remains unchanged, Captain. Provide humanitarian aid, food, medicine, emergency supplies, but no technological assistance, and absolutely no political intervention. Yes, ma'am, but some of these people are dying. The medical conditions in the refugee camps are terrible. I understand, Captain. But the moment we start fixing their problems, we validate their belief that we're meddling in their affairs. They wanted independence from human influence. They have it. On Nexus Prime, the Galactic Council was in emergency session for the 4th time that week. The once proud chamber now felt hollow, with only 7 species present. 3 members had withdrawn entirely, following humanity's example, while 2 others had fallen into civil war over resource allocation. Sub-Arbiter Gexlon stood before High Arbiter Mordun, holding a datapad filled with disaster reports. The young Craxi official had been promoted rapidly as senior council members resigned or were removed from power. High Arbiter, Gexlon said carefully, perhaps we should reconsider our position regarding the humans. The infrastructure failures are cascading beyond our ability to contain them. Mordun's 4 arms gestured dismissively, but his movements lacked their former confidence. This is temporary disruption, nothing more. The galaxy will adapt. We will become stronger without dependency on human technology. But, sir, the hegemony crystal mines have gone completely offline. The Drakmori shipyards can't maintain production without human-designed power systems. Even our own Craxi colonies are requesting emergency assistance. Silence! Mordun's voice boomed, but it sounded hollow in the nearly empty chamber. We will not crawl back to those arrogant humans. This validates our decision completely. In her water tank, Veltar watched the exchange with growing alarm. The Sathari counselor had been secretly communicating with Dr. Jin-Ho Lee, trying to understand the scope of the crisis. What she had learned terrified her. After the session ended, Veltar approached Gexlon privately. Sub-Arbiter, we need to discuss the situation honestly. The humans weren't just another member species. They were the foundation holding our civilization together. Gexlon looked around nervously to make sure they weren't being overheard. What do you mean? Think about it, Veltar said, bubbles rising rapidly in her tank as her agitation increased. Every major infrastructure project in the past century involved human engineers. Every successful trade route was discovered or maintained by human pilots. Every breakthrough in medical technology came from human research. But they were so young, only 150 years in space. Age means nothing if you're not learning, Veltar replied. We've been spacefaring for thousands of years, but we stopped innovating centuries ago. We relied on tradition, on established methods. The humans kept pushing forward, finding new solutions to old problems. Meanwhile, in the Outer Rim territories, the situation was becoming desperate. The Talani Republic, once a minor power, was now receiving desperate requests for aid from species that had previously considered them primitives. Ambassador Tae Young, formerly humanity's diplomatic representative to the Talani, now worked as a security advisor on the border between human and council space. His job was to monitor the deteriorating situation and report back to Earth. The irony is incredible, he told General In Sushin during their weekly briefing. The Drakmori, Empire, masters of space for 3,000 years, are begging the Talani for basic technological assistance. Species that wouldn't even acknowledge Talani existence before are now offering them trade concessions in exchange for help. General Shin commanded the expanded human defense forces that now patrolled the borders of human space. His ships were constantly intercepting distress calls from Council territory, but their orders were clear: Monitor, but do not intervene. It breaks my heart, Shin admitted. We have the ships to end the piracy in weeks. We have the technology to restore their infrastructure in months. But if we step in now, we validate their belief that we're meddling expansionists? Oh, finished. I know. But watching civilizations collapse when we could help, it's difficult. On the research station orbiting Titan, xenobiologist Gyu Ri Hong was conducting a comprehensive analysis of the galactic crisis. Her team had been studying the collapse patterns, trying to understand exactly how human withdrawal had triggered such widespread failures. The results are fascinating from a scientific perspective, she told her research team during their daily meeting, and terrifying from a humanitarian one. She activated a holographic model of galactic civilization. Look at this network analysis. Humans weren't just participants in galactic society. We were the connective tissue. Our unique psychology made us natural mediators between species that couldn't communicate effectively with each other. One of her assistants, a young man named Dae-Ho Park, pointed to clusters of failing systems on the display. The cascade effect is exactly what we predicted. Without human intermediaries, trade disputes escalate into conflicts. Without human maintenance protocols, complex systems fail. Without human diplomatic intervention, old rivalries resurface. The council members assumed that human contributions were minor because we were young, Hong continued. They didn't realize that our youth was actually our strength. We weren't locked into traditional thinking patterns. We could see solutions that older species had become blind to. The research painted a clear picture. Human civilization had evolved differently than any other spacefaring species. Where most aliens developed rigid hierarchies and traditional approaches to problems, humans remained adaptable and cooperative. They had become the galaxy's problem solvers without anyone realizing it. Back on Nexus Prime, Veltar was leading an increasingly desperate faction calling for reconciliation with humanity. The group met in secret, knowing that Morden would consider their actions treasonous. The humans didn't just take their technology when they left, she explained to the small group of remaining counselors. They took the instruction manuals, the maintenance schedules, and the knowledge of how everything fits together. A hegemony representative, its crystalline form flickering with anxiety, spoke up. But surely we can rebuild these systems ourselves. We are advanced civilizations. With what? Veltar asked. Our engineers have been relying on human expertise for so long that we've forgotten how to maintain our own infrastructure. Our trade networks were designed around human shipping routes. Our medical facilities used human diagnostic equipment. We're like children whose parents have suddenly disappeared. The group sat in uncomfortable silence, absorbing the implications. The proud elder species of the galaxy had become dependent on the very children they had dismissed and expelled. Outside, the council chamber's emergency reports continued to flood in. Another colony world had gone dark, its fusion reactor failing without human maintenance. The Centauri trade route, once the galaxy's busiest shipping lane, was now controlled entirely by pirates. Medical centers across 3 sectors were closing, as equipment failures left them unable to function. The galaxy was learning a harsh lesson about the difference between age and wisdom, between tradition and innovation. The humans had strolled away, taking with them not just their technology, but their unique ability to hold diverse civilizations together. And with each passing day, the Council's regret grew deeper as they realized the true scope of their catastrophic mistake. 18 months after humanity's withdrawal, the galaxy was falling apart. General Insu Shin stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching refugee ships limp toward the human border. The vessels were in terrible condition, patched hulls, failing, life support systems, and overcrowded cargo holds filled with desperate beings. General, reported Commander Yu-Jin Kang from the communications station. We're receiving another distress call from the Vorthan sector. A colony ship with 15,000 civilians is requesting emergency assistance. Their engines are failing and they're running out of food. Shin closed his eyes for a moment. These calls came every day now, sometimes every hour. Send them emergency supplies and escort them to the nearest refugee processing station. But no technological assistance. Sir, with respect, we could fix their engines in a few hours. Without repairs, that ship might not make it to safety. And the moment we start fixing their problems, we're right back where we started, Shin replied firmly. They need to ask for help, not just expect it, Ambassador Tae Young. Oh joined Shin on the bridge, carrying the latest intelligence reports from Council Space. His face was grim as he reviewed the data. General, the situation is deteriorating faster than anyone predicted. The hegemony has officially fragmented. 4 of their core worlds have declared independence. The Drakmori Empire is facing civil war over resource allocation. Shin studied the tactical displays showing the collapse of galactic civilization. Red zones marked areas under pirate control. Yellow indicated systems with failing infrastructure. And green showed the few remaining stable regions, which were shrinking every day. What about the council itself? Shin asked. Mordoon is barely holding on to power, Oh replied. 3 more species withdrew last week. The chamber that once housed 12 proud civilizations now echoes with the voices of maybe 5 desperate survivors. On Luna Station, researcher Gyuri Hong was presenting her latest analysis to President Kwan via holographic conference. Her data painted the most complete picture yet of the galactic collapse. Madam President, Hong began, our analysis confirms what many of us suspected, but were afraid to say. Humanity wasn't just a member of galactic civilization. We were its central nervous system. The holographic display showed a complex network of connections between star systems. When Hong removed the human nodes, the entire structure collapsed into isolated fragments. Our unique psychology made us natural mediators. Hong continued. We could communicate with species that had been unable to work together for millennia. We found solutions that combined the best ideas from multiple civilizations. We were the translators, the negotiators, the problem solvers. President Kwan studied the data carefully. And now that we're gone, they're rediscovering all the reasons why they couldn't cooperate in the first place. Ancient rivalries are resurfacing. Trade disputes are escalating into shooting wars. Without human mediation, diplomatic solutions are becoming impossible. The collapse was visible everywhere. The Centauri trade route, once the galaxy's economic backbone, was now a lawless corridor controlled by increasingly bold pirates. The great medical centers of the inner worlds were closing one by one, as equipment failures left them unable to function. Colonies that had thrived for centuries were being abandoned as their infrastructure failed. On Nexus Prime, the Galactic Council was in chaos. The chamber that had once been filled with the proud representatives of 12 species now held desperate meetings with whoever still bothered to attend. Veltar floated in her water tank, addressing the handful of remaining counselors. Her voice carried desperation as she spoke through her translator. We must face reality. We cannot survive without the humans. Every day we delay makes the situation worse. Gexlon, now effectively the leader of what remained of the Craxi delegation, nodded agreement. The infrastructure failures are cascading beyond our ability to contain them. We've lost contact with 37 colony worlds. Pirate attacks have increased by 400%. Our own military can barely maintain their equipment without human maintenance protocols. Morden sat slumped in his golden throne, his 4 arms hanging limply at his sides. The once mighty High Arbiter looked defeated, his purple skin pale and his eyes unfocused. But if we ask them to return, he said quietly, we admit we were wrong. We admit that these young humans were wiser than civilizations thousands of years old. Pride is a luxury we can no longer afford, Veltar replied. Our people are dying while we debate our dignity. The numbers supported her urgency. 4 billion sentient beings were now at risk of starvation or exposure. 12 star systems had gone completely dark, their communications cut off and their fates unknown. The situation had moved beyond crisis into catastrophe. In the Outer Rim, Captain Wu Jin, Ko was dealing with the human side of the refugee crisis. His border patrol ships were overwhelmed by the constant stream of beings fleeing the collapse of Council space. Captain, reported his first officer, the refugee camps are at 300% capacity. We're setting up temporary shelters, but we're running out of space and supplies. Ko looked out at the massive camps that now dotted the border worlds. Millions of beings huddled in basic shelters, dependent on human charity for survival. Many were from species that had supported the Council's ultimatum 18 months ago. Any word from Earth about expanding the refugee assistance program? Ko asked. President Kwan has authorized additional humanitarian aid, but the policy remains unchanged. We provide food, medicine, and shelter, but no technology transfer and no political intervention. The irony was crushing. The same species that had demanded humanity submit to their guidance were now entirely dependent on human generosity for their survival. The dangerous children they had expelled were the only thing standing between them and complete collapse. Dr. Jin-Ho Lee was working at one of the largest refugee medical centers, treating beings with conditions that could have been easily cured if he had access to the medical technology the council had banned. Instead, he was using primitive equipment and traditional methods, watching patients suffer from treatable diseases. "Doctor," said a young Sathari medic who was assisting him, "why don't you use the advanced scanners? I know humans have much better medical technology." Lee carefully bandaged a burn victim using basic supplies. "Because your council determined that our medical technology was too dangerous and interfered with natural healing processes. We're respecting their decision." "But this patient could be healed completely in hours with human medical technology." "No," Lee replied sadly. "But healing him would be exactly the kind of meddling your leaders wanted us to stop." The young medic looked confused and frustrated. Like many beings her age, she had grown up with human technology integrated into every aspect of life. The idea that politics could prevent the use of life-saving medicine seemed insane to her. Meanwhile, the economic collapse was accelerating. Trader Mi Kyung-nam monitored the galactic markets from her new office in human space, watching the complete breakdown of interstellar commerce. The trading networks she had spent decades building were gone, replaced by chaos and piracy. "The Vorthon Consortium officially declared bankruptcy yesterday," she reported to her economic analysis team. "That's the third major trading house to collapse this month. Without the shipping routes humans maintained, they simply can't move goods safely between systems." Her assistant, a young economist named Seung-ho Kim, studied the market data with amazement. "It's incredible how interconnected everything was. Remove one piece, human shipping expertise, and the entire economic structure collapses like a house of cards." "The council members thought trade would continue without us," Nam said. "They assumed anyone could pilot ships through the complex routes we discovered. They were wrong. The routes humans had spent generations mapping and maintaining required intimate knowledge of stellar phenomena, gravitational anomalies, and spatial distortions. Without that expertise, alien ships attempting to use the routes either got lost, damaged, or destroyed. The galaxy's economy was grinding to a halt." Back on Nexus Prime, Morden was facing the inevitable. Reports flooded in daily of new disasters, new failures, new collapses. His advisors had abandoned him, his supporters had fled to other factions, and even his own species was questioning his leadership. Gexelon approached the High Arbiter's throne with the latest casualty reports. "Sir, we've lost contact with the Craxi home system. The fusion reactors we removed from their power grid have failed. Estimated casualties are in the millions." Mordoon's head fell into his hands. His own people were dying because of decisions he had made. The temporary disruption he had predicted had become a permanent catastrophe. "What do you recommend, Sub-Arbiter?" he asked quietly. Gexelon looked around the empty chamber, then back at his defeated leader. "We need to contact the humans, not to negotiate from strength, but to beg for their help. We need to admit we were wrong and ask them to save us from our own arrogance." Mordun closed his eyes. The words were like poison in his mouth, but he could no longer deny reality. The galaxy was dying, and only humanity could save it. The proud elder species were about to learn the hardest lesson of all. Sometimes wisdom comes from the youngest voice in the room. 2 years after humanity's dramatic exit from the Galactic Council, a small fleet of damaged alien ships approached Luna Station. The vessels looked nothing like the proud warships that had once patrolled Council space. Their hulls were patched with mismatched metal, their engines sputtered with failing power systems, and their communications equipment barely functioned. President Yoonji Kwan watched from her office in Seoul as the battered fleet requested permission to dock. The irony was not lost on her. The same species that had once demanded humanity submit to their authority were now begging for an audience. Madam President, reported Admiral Young-Sik Choi from Luna Station, the delegation is requesting immediate humanitarian assistance. Their ships are in terrible condition. One vessel is showing critical life support failures. Provide emergency aid, Kwon ordered. Repair their life support systems and give them whatever supplies they need. But make it clear this is humanitarian assistance only. Ambassador Hyun-Woo Kim had returned from his new position managing refugee affairs to handle this unprecedented situation. He stood in the same conference room where he had once listened to alien ultimatums, but now the roles were completely reversed. The alien delegation was led by Veltar, who had assumed emergency authority after the complete collapse of the old council structure. Her water tank showed signs of hasty repairs, and her translator device crackled with static. Behind her, Gexelon represented what remained of the Craxi government, his purple skin pale with exhaustion and stress. President Kwon, Veltar began, her voice thick with emotion. We come seeking your assistance, not as equals requesting aid, but as failures begging for mercy. The words hung in the air like a confession. President Kwon studied the broken delegation before responding. What kind of assistance are you seeking? Gexelon stepped forward, his four arms trembling slightly. Our colonies are dying. Our trade networks have collapsed completely. Pirates control half the galaxy. We need your help to survive. Dr. Jin-Ho Lee, now heading the humanitarian assessment team, presented his findings. 4 billion sentient beings are at immediate risk of starvation or exposure. 17 star systems have gone completely dark. We don't even know if anyone is still alive there. The infrastructure collapse is total. The scale of the disaster was beyond anything in galactic history. Entire civilizations that had thrived for millennia were now reduced to scattered refugee populations. The proud Drakmori Empire existed only as a handful of overcrowded ships. The mighty hegemony had fractured into dozens of warring factions. 2 years ago, President Kwon said quietly, your council told us we were dangerous children who needed guidance. You demanded we surrender our technology, stop our expansion, and submit to your authority. What changed? Veltar's tentacles writhed with shame. We were wrong. Catastrophically, tragically wrong. We mistook our age for wisdom, our traditions for superiority. We didn't realize that humanity wasn't just another member species. You were the foundation holding everything together. The admission was painful, but necessary. The aliens had spent 2 years learning the hard way that experience without innovation led to stagnation, that hierarchy without merit led to failure, and that pride without humility led to destruction. Gexelon continued the confession. We thought we were teaching you your place in the galaxy. Instead, you taught us ours. Without human mediation, we remembered why our species couldn't cooperate in the first place. Without human innovation, our technology stagnated and failed. Without human adaptability, we couldn't respond to new challenges. The negotiations that followed were unlike anything in galactic history. For the first time, humans held all the advantages. They had the technology, the resources, and the organizational capability to restore order to the galaxy. The question was whether they would choose to help. President Kwon convened her cabinet to discuss the response. The debate was intense and emotional. We have the power to save billions of lives, argued Dr. Lee. How can we stand by and watch entire civilizations collapse? General In Su-shin presented the military perspective. Our fleets could restore order in months. We could clear out the pirates, repair the infrastructure, and stabilize the trade routes. But at what cost to our own security? Admiral Choi raised strategic concerns. If we intervene now, what prevents them from making the same mistakes again? How do we ensure this never happens? President Kwon listened to all perspectives before making her decision. We will help, she announced, but not on their terms, on ours. The galaxy will be rebuilt, but it will be rebuilt differently. The new framework that emerged from the negotiations was revolutionary. The old Galactic Council was dissolved completely, replaced by the Terran Galactic Confederation. Humanity would not rule the galaxy, but they would serve as its stabilizing force. The new structure gave humans effective veto power over major decisions. Any species seeking human technological assistance had to contribute to joint research initiatives. Most importantly, the condescending attitude that had led to the crisis was formally renounced. "We're not asking you to worship us," Ambassador Kim explained to the alien delegation. "We're asking you to treat us as equals. No more talk of guidance from elder species. No more assumptions that age equals wisdom. From now on, ideas succeed or fail based on their merit, not the age of the species that proposed them." The restoration began immediately. Admiral Choi's fleets deployed across the galaxy, bringing order to chaos and hope to desperate worlds. Human engineers worked around the clock to restore critical infrastructure. Human doctors treated diseases that had been ravaging alien populations for months. But the process was different this time. Instead of simply providing aid, humans insisted on training alien specialists to maintain their own systems. Instead of mediating disputes, they taught other species how to communicate effectively with each other. Instead of solving problems, they taught problem-solving methods. Captain So-Young Park found herself commanding a mixed fleet of human and alien ships working to clear pirates from the Centauri trade route. The operation was a model of the new, cooperative approach. "The key is patience," she explained to her alien officers. "We're not just eliminating the immediate threat. We're building a sustainable security network that can prevent future piracy outbreaks." Her fleet included reformed pirates who had been offered amnesty in exchange for information about raider tactics. It included alien military units that were learning modern combat techniques. And it included civilian volunteers who were being trained to recognize and report suspicious activity. Within 6 months, the galaxy began to stabilize. Trade routes reopened under joint human-alien management. Colonies received new power systems designed to be maintained by local engineers. Medical centers upgraded their equipment and trained their staff in human diagnostic techniques. But the most important change was psychological. The old hierarchy based on age and tradition was gone, replaced by a merit-based system that valued innovation and cooperation. Young species were no longer expected to defer to elder civilizations. New ideas were evaluated based on their effectiveness, not their source. Ambassador Kim, watching the first convoy of restored trade ships depart from Luna Station, reflected on the transformation. "They spent so much time trying to teach us our place in the galaxy that they forgot to learn theirs. The galaxy was indeed stronger than before. The Confederation's structure prevented any single species from dominating others. The joint research initiatives sparked technological innovations that benefited everyone. The cooperative security network ensured that no region could be overrun by pirates or raiders." 5 years later, the transformation was complete. The galaxy thrived under a new model of civilization that emphasized cooperation over domination, innovation over tradition, and merit over hierarchy. Humans served not as rulers but as facilitators, helping diverse species work together toward common goals. Mordun, the former High Arbiter who had triggered the crisis, worked as a junior administrator on a human-established refugee settlement. His fall from power had been complete, but he had found something more valuable than authority: humility. "I thought leadership meant commanding from above," he said when asked about his transformation. "The humans taught us it means serving from within." The galaxy had learned its lesson. The youngest voice in the room was often the wisest one to listen to. And no one ever wanted to see what would happen if the humans decided to stroll away again.